You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, April 28th. The draft is over. We've talked about it ad nauseum at this point, but I haven't talked about it with my Monday co-host yet, Weston. And today's probably the best day to talk about it because our heads are a little bit clear. We have time to marinate on some of these draft picks. And, now we can give a really good assessment of what we think about this draft. And I want to hear Weston's favorite pick of the draft for the 49ers. So I'm very curious about that. Weston, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm going to treat this like the first victory Monday of the 2025 season and I'm not just drinking the Kool-Aid. Sunday after the draft felt good, right? And we'll talk about like why, but I feel good. I feel positive, and I feel like this is good carrying into camp and OTAs and things that we're going to see over the next coming couple months leading into the season. But I feel good. I feel optimistic this Monday.
Okay, good. I mean, I almost feel like I'm going the other way. Like after the draft, having to talk about the draft, the first day was awesome. Day 2, I thought was, great. Day 3 was like, I got to wait to see the vision. I talked myself into the vision, high upside picks. And then today, I'm hearing all this talk about, the 49ers didn't get a tackle again. And I'm like, shoot, yeah, you're right. I'm like, I would have really liked them to take a tackle. And then there's also all this talk about the 49ers reaching on players. And it didn't really bother me at first. Like, I actually pushed back on that idea a little bit on some of my shows after the draft, and but it's starting to bug me because this is something that they do. But we will talk about both of those things towards the end of the show. But the first thing I'm going to ask you, Weston, because I haven't had a chance to really talk to you, although you did text me after the first pick and you said you were surprised that you weren't upset about it. So I just want to know just your overall thoughts on this draft. It seems like you are optimistic about it. And then tell me, who was your favorite pick?
Okay. Well, I'll say this first, Steph. You mentioned like the tackle position.
Yes.
I would say even in a victory, it's never perfect, right? So that would have been the perfect draft coming out of there with a tackle of the future that you are confident in. Could be the tackle of the future. Understood. I would say overall, again, just very pleased with the draft. Do I have some of my concerns, some of my question marks? Sure, I get it. You know what I mean? But in my eyes, like, if you're given letter grades and things of that nature, if you're in the B plus range, you did your job, right? Like, is there really an A plus? Like, those are so far and few between. Defensively, I thought there was a clear plan, right? And a clear plan to get better on that side of the ball. I would say that if there's one thing that rubs me wrong from this draft, it's more of the constant, and we do this all the time as fans. It doesn't matter what sport, what team, especially when the coaching staffs remain the same. It's like, this player is the replacement for that player, right? And the truth is they are, but that's just for positional value. They're not like the actual replacement of that player. You know what I mean? But it's like, we know what Saleh wants to do defensively. He went and found guys that fit that. And we had guys that fit that before when he was here. So it's hard. It's easy to make that comparison, but it's like not true. You know what I mean? Like, I'll say, Nick Martin is not Dre Greenlaw. Nick Martin would tell you he's not Dre Greenlaw, right? But they do similar things well that fits within the style of this defense. So that's all I'll say is there seemed to be a clear plan, and one that I can get on board with too, right? As just a fan, I think coincidentally, like, I like the plan, and I like the players for the plan, right? And so, like, it's not often that those things line up. I think there's definitely some question marks on the picks that were related to the offensive side of the ball, but I know I don't want to throw it all out there now, but I also have plenty of thoughts around the reaching, not reaching. Is this a tendency of the 49ers? Is there such thing as a reach, right? Like, is that just made up terminology based on draft evaluations? But I'm excited. I'm excited because I think clearly they needed to get better on the defensive side of the ball, right? We had literally a mass exodus on the defensive side of the ball. And whether we are or not remains to be seen, but there was a huge emphasis placed on getting better defensively. So I applaud that. I'm excited about that. I can't wait to watch the product, because the reality is all these guys, they're going to get a chance, and they're going to get a chance early. So we're going to see what they're made of.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can't be mad at the fact that they addressed their biggest need, and they had to. Like, it would have been malpractice if they went into this draft and, didn't get at least 3 defensive starters out of it, right? Yep. And it feels like they might have gotten more than that out of this draft, right? And for the first, what was it, 5 or 6 picks being defense, I think that, first 5 picks, I'm not mad at that at all. We'll talk about the tackle thing, because that is something they're going to have to address at some point, Weston. And, it just doesn't seem like they have the same sense of urgency there as maybe they do other positions, whether or not that's the right choice or whether that won't come back to bite them. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But Weston, I don't think you told me who your favorite was.
No, I did not. I don't know. I don't think this will shock you, Steph, but I'm going to go with 3rd round pick Upton Stout from Western Kentucky, the undersized corner. I love a feisty football player. You remember how excited I was about Renardo Green when they made that draft pick, because I said he's just a physical, confident guy. These two are not the same. They're not the same build. They won't even excel at the same positions in the National Football League. There's a lot of reasons why I'm big on Upton Stout. First of all, he's found the end zone multiple times on the defensive side of the ball year after year. That's a big plus, right? Yeah. Knowing what to do with the balls in your hand, that changes games. He is physical for a little guy. He is feisty. I'm not using the D word because that gets overused that's all you hear now when the players like, Coach, you got a dog. Coach, you got a dog. Everybody's a dog, right, in the NFL. But I will say, while he's probably not the most athletic, he is super scrappy.
Very.
Do I watch a lot of Western Kentucky football? No, I'm sure most of us do not. And I know you can put together a highlight reel that could even make me look like I can play in the National Football League. So that's misleading. I would just say the characteristics, he's very fluid, very aggressive. And that lines up perfectly, because I think his best days ahead of him in the National Football League are going to be in the slot. And you need to have a nose for finding the football. You have to be a willing and able tackler. And the best part about Upton Stout is, for me, it takes the guesswork out of what to do with your high-priced corner in Diamador Lenore. You make this pick with the hopes that this guy pops, so you slide Demo outside, paired with Renardo. So I think that makes you improved in 2 positions defensively with this pick, and that's why Upton Stout gets my nod for my favorite player of this draft for the San Francisco 49ers.
I do like him as a nickel guy for the 49ers. Obviously, with his size, he almost is going to have to be. Although at Western Michigan, or was it Kentucky? I don't even remember what. Well, Kentucky. Sorry, Western Kentucky. He played on the outside there as well, so he has a speed for it, right? But I think at the NFL, bigger receivers, faster receivers. I mean, I think the slot's going to be his spot. And as you said, that's going to free up Lenore to just be on outside duty, right? And I couldn't tell if that's what the 49ers wanted to do based on, the corners that I was hearing them have interest in. But now that they've drafted Upton Stout, it's like, okay, we can focus on Lenore being the guy on the outside. Stout seems to be, a guy who can play some good nickel. And, you're not going to risk your run defense faltering at all with Upton Stout, because he has a nose for the football. Like, he wants to get in on the action. I love that about his game. Feisty is a great word to describe him. He's a really good run defender. They lined him up so many different spots at Western Kentucky. So I'm excited to see if the 49ers, kind of do the same. But in any case, if all he does is line up at the slot, I think that's going to be a really nice spot for him to kind of showcase what he does best. I think, remember when the 49ers drafted Samuel Womack, like he wasn't seeing the field, and we were just like, why not? Like, what is this guy missing? And there was something, I don't remember the exact quote, but if you recall, Weston, it was like he didn't have like the toughness that it required to play like the nickel spot, which is like that's where they projected him, and he just didn't have what it took. Upton Stout is like the anti-Samuel Womack in that sense, I think.
For sure. And you can't coach that physical mentality, right? So I think coaches probably fell in love with this guy. And I think that's why the 49ers probably felt the need to take him with that pick when they were sitting there, when they looked at their board, because they were probably confident he would not be there back around. But I agree with you, Steph, in the sense of like, I don't know if this was the 49ers plan, was to let's go find a corner that lets us move Diamador outside. I think that's the way that it fell. I think if they were looking defensive back, like they were going to stay true to their board. And if they found somebody that was a true outside guy, okay, well then they have a $90 million slot corner, nickel corner. I think they were comfortable with that. But I think this, again, all this is about this guy being able to find the field and being able to compete early and often, takes the guesswork out of it. I think you put Demo at his best spot. The Samuel Womack thing, I was actually just thinking about this. Like, I think maybe they just square pegged a round hole. Like maybe he just wasn't meant for inside in the National Football League. Listen, he's ascended since he's left the San Francisco 49ers, and he's got to go play a more true position, an outside corner. So missed by them. Good talent, right player, wrong spot, wrong usage, etc. I think this one takes all the guesswork out of it. Like this, it would be very rare for somebody his size in today's National Football League to exceed outside the numbers. 20 years ago, he was the norm in terms of size of corners, etc. It's a different league now. But I'm excited about him. He does everything well. Like he's not a superstar in one thing or another. To me, he's just consistent,
well-rounded,
and that's what you need. Then that's what you need out of the nickel.
I love that, and I feel like I get that sense from a couple of the 49ers picks this year, where in that sense they felt safe because there's a high floor for some of these guys. Sure. They do the non-sexy things well, and you need that. They don't need to do the sexy things well all the time, but as long as you have a baseline that you can work with, you could see the field, and then you can grow into being a contributor on this team. So, but there were some other players in this draft as well that also do the sexy things well. And Weston, my favorite pick in the draft, I mean, if you hadn't caught a show from me since then, is Alfred Collins. I mean, he is a dog. He is a beast. Every time I watched him, I was like, this guy has everything that I want to see from a defensive player. Just like nasty, tenacity. I mean, he's huge, 6'6", 332 pounds, long arms. Like, he's great at run defense. So this was one of those picks where, along with Michael Williams, back to back making these picks, it's like, okay, I see the vision. Like, obviously you're serious about improving the run defense, Salah. And I 100% am with you on that, because Alfred Collins was one of my favorites to watch in the lead up to the draft. And it's because he just played with a different type of energy that, I felt like the 49ers did need. And he's just a disruptor at every level. I mean, he gets through his blocks. I don't know how teams are going to be able to run against this 49ers defensive line with this beast at the helm. I mean, I think he's going to have some early and very strong returns for their investment in Alfred Collins with their second round pick.
Yeah, I would say don't let my excitement for Upton Stout, which is just also a great football name, by the way, make you feel like I'm overlooking the picks that came before him, specifically this one at number 43, Alfred Collins. It's evident Salah has a type, right? The interior, and this is not a comparison, but this is the trap that we fall into. But similarity in traits in terms of height and length to aforementioned Eric Armstead or DeForest Buckner. Not saying they're the same skill levels. Those guys were first round picks. This guy was a second round pick. Those guys, all pro status. You know what I mean? Like Alfred Collins hasn't even touched a professional football field yet, but he's rather quick for somebody who's 6'6", 330 plus pounds. And this is what I talk about with the plan and loving the plan is intentionally. We're going to do everything we can to make it really hard for you to run the football on us because it was really easy to run the football against the San Francisco 49ers last year. And a lot of the problems came down to, especially in those tight games, getting off the field on third down. 3rd and 8 is a lot different than 3rd and 3 in the National Football League. We knocked Bosa for lack of production last year, right? In some capacity. Well, did he really have the production opportunities? You know what I mean? Like they just found themselves in unfavorable 3rd downs more often than not. Hence why they just weren't getting off the field, drive, sustain points, losses, right? The equivalent. And I think they intentionally want to make that harder. And that is without question, his number one attribute is being able to eat double teams, shed blocks, hold steadfast, at the line of scrimmage. And it's hard for me to temper my excitement. I was excited about last year's draft, and I definitely had some questions, but there were certain players that I think we were all excited about. There's equally that many in this one, and Alfred's definitely one of them. Great pick. Yeah. I'm surprised he was there, to be honest. Loved the pick.
You?
I was.
Okay.
I just think when you see D-line it's FOMO in the draft, right? That's why you see runs on positions, right? One wide receiver goes, 7 go in the next 15 picks. Running back, whatever it is. Just thought there was an opportunity that somebody I personally think in terms of evaluations, I think a lot of people missed on Alfred Collins. I think he could just as easily be a first-round talent, let alone the 43rd overall pick in the draft.
Yeah, I think the 49ers got a good one. I can't wait to see what he does, what Robert Saleh does with him. And so, yeah, just that was my favorite one. But we had a question from East Coast Red and Gold. What's going on, Jess? Asked least favorite pick. I had thought about that. I don't think there was one that like really repulsed me enough to like call it least favorite. Just one that I think the Curtis Rourke one, while maybe expected, because I figured, of course, they're going to get themselves a quarterback. I felt like there were still some really good players on the board that were at positions of greater need than quarterback. But, this seems to be their process where every draft, usually towards the end of it, they're going to get themselves one guy at quarterback. And so that's fine. I should have expected it, I guess. I just thought maybe they'd take some flyers at positions of need where you need, like, you could use some more depth.
Yeah, I think this one's hard. The offensive picks didn't make a ton of sense to me. In most cases, I would have to say Curtis Rourke as well. Steph, you know me. I'm a huge proponent of you should always draft a quarterback because you never know, right? I agree with you, though. Where they picked them in the 7th round, that was their first pick in the 7th round. Like, I still think that could be used on something more than what could potentially just be a camp body when all is said and done. Because here's the truth, right? Like, you had Mordecai from last year. You brought in Mac Jones. I don't even know why I was drawing a blank on that. You bring in Mac Jones. The reality is like, even if a Curtis Rourke, he's just not going to get opportunities to shine like early and often. So you're not going to know how talented he is unless a Brock Purdy accident happens again, right? Because like if Brock goes down, Mac's going in, and Mac could probably carry the offense for a little bit. So this guy's not going to get those opportunities. I would have rather seen, I don't know, maybe another offensive lineman just to have a little bit more depth. But I just don't think, again, 7th round pick here, not Mr. Irrelevant. I just don't think you're going to ever really get to see what he has based on the quarterback depth chart today. Just feels like that pick could have been allocated elsewhere.
Yeah, I think so too. And, maybe this is a good segue to the discussion of the 49ers not taking another tackle. Or a tackle. I shouldn't say another. What was the first one, right? They haven't gotten one. And how many drafts has it been since they've addressed this? It's been a long time. And in the meantime, the end looms near for Trent Williams. Like, we know that. And not just that, like, we saw a whole season where Trent was unhealthy and you needed someone there. I mean, you did have Jalen Moore there, who I thought stepped in pretty admirably. Now he's gone. He's in Kansas City. And so I think this was a draft where, okay, it wasn't a 100% must. There were obviously other needs. I do agree with that. Needs in which they addressed. They did address in this draft, more so on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm fine with that being more the priority. However, like, you do, at some point, you have to address this elephant in the room. That is, you are not going to have Trent Williams forevermore. And this would have been, I think, a good opportunity where they could have found some guys to maybe groom behind Trent Williams, and because they like to develop their offensive linemen if they draft them. They don't like to start rookies right away. I think Dominic Pooney and there's been maybe 1 or 2 other guys that they've started as rookies where I think those guys were outliers, but for the most part, they draft them a little bit later, in the draft, day 2 or day 3 even. And those guys, take some time. So yeah, I think given that, I would have liked to see them draft one in this class. And John Lynch, honestly did say that they looked at it, like there were some tackles that they liked. He hinted at them getting sniped. And Matt Barrows was on the Tim K podcast, and he kind of points out one particular turn in the draft where he feels like specifically that's where they got sniped is the Raiders twice. Once they grabbed Caleb Rogers from Texas Tech, one of the guys tackles they brought in for a 30 visit. And then they drafted, again, the Raiders drafted Charles Grant, who was the tackle from William Mary, who would have been an amazing fit for this offense. Outside zone experience, has everything I think that the 49ers would look for in a tackle. They brought him in for a private workout ahead of the draft. They take both of those players just a few picks before the 49ers are on the clock. And so I think that is one probably a point in which they got sniped, and John Lynch said, we didn't want to force it either. So they don't want to take a tackle that maybe they're not as convicted on.
Yeah.
But, they lost out. Maybe they didn't feel like it was worth trading up for those guys. I don't know, but it's just unfortunate that that's how it went down.
Yeah. I'll give them a pass in this draft. I mean, look, I'm not as concerned about the interior offensive line. I think you can find those people along the way. I bet this kid Colby is going to get a chance to see if he can find himself just based on the success that Pooney had in the past and the style of offense that he played in at Iowa. And Iowa is known for churning out some pretty good offensive linemen. So you got to be pretty decent just to be there in the first place. Like, I think Connor will get a chance. I'm as disappointed in anybody because there's no succession plan specifically for Trent Williams, right? That's what we're talking about right here. There is no succession plan. There's no backup plan. The truth, though, is, Steph, every team in the National Football League, if they lost their left tackle right now, they'd be just as bad shape as the San Francisco 49ers, right? That's the reality.
This is true.
But where I'm with you is where is the investment? This is the position maybe you go find a project, right? And take that flyer 5th, 6th, 7th round to invest in, and maybe one blossoms. Because otherwise, if you seriously want to protect your franchise quarterback, if that's what he's going to be, you now find yourself in the territory of, I have to go trade for one, right? Like I'm going to have to wait an offseason. I'm going to bring a veteran in. And that is significantly more costly and expensive to do than it is to try to cultivate talent. That's it for me. Like I do actually believe, I don't believe a lot of what comes out of John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan's mouth, but I do actually believe that there were intentions, right? Like to do it. And then this is what happens in the draft. Jesus, so you all play fantasy football. It happens to you all the time. The person in front of you picks the person that you were going to pick. And you were like,
I know,
F you know what I mean? Like this
Pete
is
Carroll, man.
Yeah, this is the real world version of it, you know? Like these guys get paid to find good players too. Our team's not alone in that. But here's the catch-22. Where ideally you find somebody that's going to replace Trent Williams is your succession plan. You're probably realistically drafting that person in the top half of the draft, right? Day 1, day 2, if you have them pegged to be that type of talent. Where they were picking, when they were picking, I don't think that person was there. Period, point blank, right? To make that early on investment. So then the question becomes, well, where's the one? I'm not saying go make 4 offensive lineman picks like you did invested into your defensive line, but waiting to the second to last pick out of 11 picks does feel a little egregious in my opinion. And that's one of my negativities with this in terms of just having, you know, like this is where you roll the dice, you know, maybe instead of Curtis Rourke, it's fill in the blank left tackle from conference football team that just give the guy a shot. That's just the way that I think though.
Which, like, going back to the possibility that the 49ers may at some point have to make a trade for a left tackle, they've done that before. And, you know, I think they're comfortable with that and maybe the possibility of being forced into that. But you're not going to find another Trent Williams to replace your Joe Staley. You're not going to find another Joe Staley to replace your Trent. You know, like is there an elite left tackle that you're going to be able to get to replace Trent at one point? I don't know. I mean, I guess at this point, we're just asking for anybody. So whenever that time comes, maybe that's when the 49ers make that move. But as you said, Weston, it's not like the left tackles and just tackles in general, and quality ones at that, starting quality, are growing on trees. And so, like, teams aren't exactly as incentivized to just trade away Trent Williams or anyone of that caliber. I think the fact that they even got him was malpractice by the Commanders at that time, in my opinion. But, you know, the 49ers were winners in that case.
You know what it is, Steph? Is like, remember once upon a time, the National Football League, offensive tackles went number 1 overall. You know what I mean? Like left tackles went number 1 overall in the draft. They don't anymore. Look at the top off. Will Compton, different, right? Or Campbell. Will Campbell, right? The kid from LSU.
Campbell.
I don't know why I called him Will Compton. Apologies. But, you know, then you got Membao, who's next who comes off. That's a guard, right? You know what I mean? Like these, like it's the positional value is not there anymore. The players aren't there anymore. And to your point, like the 49ers basically got Trent Williams for free in the grand scheme of things of like what they gave up to get him, because he refused to go play for the team that had his contractual rights. They needed to get something, you know, instead of nothing. And you got an all-pro. That's not happening again. You know what I mean? And Trent Williams is not out there in the National Football League right now. The truth is a lot of teams are scrambling to figure out that particular position. And I don't know if the ones that went early in this draft, I don't know if any of them are going to be staples for their team or if they're going to be floating around. That's why, to me, it becomes more important to invest the later collateral into it. Catch lightning in a bottle. That's what you're hoping for, right? Like, it's just some guy who's just like, oh shit, because what did we learn this weekend? Draft evaluations on players are all over the board and nobody's right. Nobody's even close.
For sure.
Nobody's even close.
Yep.
Maybe you stumble, you know, every dog steps in SHIT once in a while. Maybe you do, you know, I don't know.
If, like, I don't want to speak this into existence, but just hypothetically speaking, if Trent Williams, for any reason, were to miss any time, who are you putting in there at left tackle? Like, if you had a guess from the 49ers perspective, I think maybe Spencer Burford. He played tackle in college, right? So he can be, that next guy like the Jalen Moore that could just step in and surprise you at that spot. And, honestly, maybe he'll end up being better than he was at guard, but I don't know. That's the only guy I can think of. There's a lot of question marks.
Nick Sakelj played a lot of left tackle in college for my alma mater, Fordham, go Rams. But he was drafted specifically to be a guard because of the measurables, right? The shorter arms, it's the skill set, etc. Like, I don't know if that person's there. One of these people will have to be, like we talked about, just like an unsung hero that you didn't expect. And some of them have been floating around the league a little bit. So probably not, right? But not the good news, but the truth is, the reality is like, go listen to content creators from every single team in the National Football League, and I'm sure this is a topic of conversation. What the heck do we do if our left tackle goes down, right? Like, look, Jalen Moore.
And that's a fair point. Yeah,
we would all say, right, for years we said Jalen Moore is subpar. How could he not replace Colton McKivitz at right tackle, right? Like, how can he not find his way in the lineup? And then actually surprisingly had a pretty good year last year filling in for Trent Williams, and boom, before you know it, paid. Why is he paid? Because everybody's trying to solve the left tackle problem in the National Football League. It's a tough position.
That it is. And, like we were saying earlier, just trying to evaluate the positional value of some of these. Speaking from like where they're drafted, just the consensus of some of these players where they should be drafted. It, like you said, it is all over the place. That's the next topic I want to get to, Weston, because you were absolutely right. This has been a big topic. Like a lot of the times at the 49ers draft, we get into this and, we look back at the 49ers drafts and we have the discussion all over again. And I mean, I think it's coming up again, right? So I want to post a couple of screen grabs here that I saw on Twitter, except that here we go. Let me just put them up on the screen here. So the reaches thing, right? I mean, looking at the 49ers history, if you look back to 2017, which is when Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took over, there's been a lot of misses, and a lot of those misses have been big reaches at the same time. And you look at the chart on the right, and shout out to SF Data Niners on Twitter for putting all of this data together and compiling it into this beautiful chart. Looking at the top one, Mitch Wishnowsky, drafting him in the 4th round, very bad as far as consensus versus where he was drafted, right? Ty Davis Price, he didn't exactly pan out for the 49ers, right? That was another big reach in the 3rd round. Then Joe Williams, 4th round, big reach. Samuel Womack, 5th round, also a player that didn't work out. Trey Lance, as far as, the comparisons to the big board, not that big of a difference, but you did give up a lot to get him. That context isn't shown here. The difference between his big board ranking and his draft position was only 4. But given everything else they gave up for him, I think that was a big miss as well. So, like, this chart shows a lot of different reaches and draft misses. A lot of them have ended up being, I think the only ones on this chart that haven't been misses, and I'm not going to mention the players who just got drafted because we don't know what they're going to be yet, but Aaron Banks, I would say that was a pretty good pick. I mean, Wishnowsky got a 2nd contract, got an extension, but still, I mean, that difference is horrendous, right? So I'll say it kind of worked out. Justin School, like, he was okay. He was serviceable, but he's not like he was any kind of game changer for this team. Bernardo Green, Ricky Pearsall still remains to be seen, but the early returns on that look okay. Charlie Warner, fine, but there's a lot of concerning things, I think, with this chart. lot of misses that correlate with big reaches for the 49ers. And so they added on 4 more reaches in this class as far as top 20 reaches relative to their draft position to the consensus big board. So I hope it works out for them this time, but history has shown that it doesn't always work out.
No, and this is the hardest thing about the draft, right? Is I would love to see this chart for all 31 other teams, right? And see how long their reach list is and what an average draft might look like in terms of big board rankings versus draft positions. But the evaluations of these players are all over the place. They're all over the place. So it's hard. Yeah, I mean, you can statistically prove that, like, hey, this guy didn't work out. You drafted him here. Consensus was he was here. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, do better. But it's also like every football team is built different. Every draft board is going to look different. So, like, yeah, the big board ranking. And keep in mind that, like, yes, this seems to be a common theme for the 49ers, but the scouts, general managers, things of that, people who are involved in these rooms, that room is different every single year. So it's not just like, hey, this person's there. This tends to be a bad outcome. I believe, like, this is alarming, right, when you put it in front of somebody like that. But I also just believe, and I've said it a lot of time on your show, Steph, is like, if you have a guy, go get that guy, right? Like that's it. It's that simple. If you have a guy in mind, go get him when you feel like you can go get him. Like, yeah, we're looking at this like, hey, Nick Martin's got a delta of negative 95. But if that dude finds his way onto the field,
right? Yeah.
Week 2, week 3, who the hell cares? Like,
right.
who? But to your point, the people on the right side of my screen have not fared so well when being on the field, and they've all been given an opportunity to be on the field. But even like a Samuel Womack we were talking about earlier, like, that's a really big delta. But I would say if you went and regraded or reworked your draft board from the year that he was picked in 2022, he's probably not 465 on the big board based on how he's progressed in Indianapolis. So it's not a full sample size. I don't know how to I don't know how to justify it, but I don't know how to say it's wrong, because the truth is like, the draft is not an exact science. More teams miss on players than they do land on players. That's just a fact, you know?
Yeah, that's 100% true.
So this is, I guess, based on this average, this is are the worst team in the league in terms of reach. But you know what, Steph? Over this time, they've also been one of the teams that's won the most football games.
Yeah, I mean, that much is true when they've hit on guys. And let's not forget, like, they've gotten guys who have outplayed their draft position by far. I mean, Lenore, Warner, Kittle. I think any team would trade some of those picks for any of these other, like, reaches or anything like that, right? So there are some instances where it's worked out for them, and they have a process, they stick to it. And even I think it was Tyreek Ahmad and Josh Williams and RJ Gillen talking to media after the draft, and they talk about their process and how they trust it. And it's a theme now, right? I mean, we've seen it each and every draft with the 49ers. They are higher on some guys than the consensus, which, by the way, like, Weston, my pushback to the whole consensus thing and the reach thing is that the consensus comes from draft analysts. It comes from mock drafts, big boards, where these guys do big boards and they analyze every single draft eligible prospect. Yep. And in this particular class, 300 plus prospects. The 49ers had 200 draftable grades on players. So you're talking about 100 guys, some in the middle rounds, I'm sure, where the 49ers are like, we're not drafting him. Like, he's not even on our board at all. So that's where things start to get wonky. That's why on day 3 of the draft, you start seeing all kinds of weird picks and players you'd never heard of, right? Because at that point, teams are just picking based on, certain parameters that they look for in players and not consensus, So that's where it starts to get wonky. And that's why the perception of what's a reach is, I think, a little skewed by fans and the draftniks of the world. And so that's why it doesn't bother me too much. When it does start to bother me, Weston, is when, like the graph that we were just looking at, where a lot of those reaches haven't worked out. Because if a team is all in on a guy and we're saying, like, just get your guy.
Yep.
And that guy doesn't end up being a guy, that I think that's where it's fair to start to question that process. Yeah. But again, it has also worked out for them as well. And just looking at this here, and sorry, I'm trying to make it bigger, but and if you look at the average reach in rounds 1 through 3, 49ers they've reached the most. If you look at the chart on the left, reach percentage for each pick in this draft for rounds 1 through 7, they're towards the bottom. But look, like, they're also, if you look back at some drafts, there are some teams who are bad teams that have been bad teams that are in the favorable side of this, where they don't reach on players, and yet they're not a good team. So, like, this isn't everything.
It's certainly not, because you don't just comprise your team through the draft, right? We know that. This is a big element of it. A lot of teams that do well in the draft are able to have sustained success. I think where my question comes into play is, like, looking at the chart on the right. Okay, what is it maybe that the 49ers value amongst their prospects that maybe other teams don't value as much? You start to look for those differentiators to say why the reach. I also think the 49ers have this tendency to fall in love with players, like, through the draft evaluation, like, and it's personal. And I think they get paranoid, like, oh, that, they're here now.
He's not going to be there.
He's not going to be there next time I go. There's too many variables, right? Like, somebody could trade up to do it. Like, so much out of your control. Like, hey, I control here right now. And then definition of a reach. Like, let's just use Nick Martin as example, right? No, he was injured last year. But the year before, in 2023, he was first team all Big 12, a Power 5 conference, first team in conference with 140 tackles in the season. Dude flies around the football. You're going to tell me this is a 250th ranked prospect on your draft? Like, what are we doing? Talanoa Hufanga, another 5th round pick, was Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year when he came out of college and was a 5th round pick. So, it's the draft. Too much of this balance becomes about, like, the stuff that doesn't matter, right? Like, that's not on the field. It's height, weight, speed, right? And it's like, no, at the end of the day, this game is about playing the game and the willingness to do it. So, look, I could probably skew up you give me enough time and enough data scientists to work with, I could probably flip a graph that puts the 49ers on the exact opposite end of this for the overproduction they have received from lower end draft picks versus the rest of the National Football League. The truth is, actually, do you watch Good Morning Football at all?
Yeah, sometimes.
All right. So I'm not a big fan of it anymore. The whole cast of Peter Schrager is, like, from my, like, area where I grew up. Kay Adams was great on it. Just a different show now. Not a knock. I don't watch as much. Called it this morning. Kyle Brandt talking about the draft. And he's like, I have a 67-page report here of everybody's first round mock draft, right? The only the highest rated analyst got 9 of 32 picks right. And they all had Shedeur Sanders in the first round. So what does that mean? It means it's a freaking crapshoot. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what you're going to get until you unwrap it. That's why the grade exercise is a little wonky to me. You can only talk about it on paper and what they're going to become. I'll bring this full circle. On paper, even with what I feel like are some false steps taken with the offensive side of the draft, I think the 49ers drastically improved themselves going into the 2025 season.
100%. Them addressing defense as much as
defense.
Yeah, I mean, you and addressing the biggest part that they needed to on the defense, which was the run defense. You're not going to get on those passing downs if you don't fix the run defense. And yeah, they're doing it the right way. And they got the easy schedule. So like, yeah, I have a lot of confidence that this defense is going to be very much improved. I think with just Robert Saleh alone, it's going to be improved from last year, right? And then you add on all the players they brought in via this draft, many of which I am a fan of for them. So, yeah, I'm okay with some of these so-called reaches.
You saw the stat that this was the first time since 1981 that the San Francisco 49ers allocated their first 5 draft picks towards the defensive side of the ball.
Crazy.
What took all the 49ers did in the 80s was win 4 Super Bowls, right? All after that fact. And that's one of the things that's slept on. Like when you look back in history, you think about Joe Montana, Roger Craig, Jerry Rice, right? You think about the offense. Those offenses were super prolific under Bill Walsh and then eventually George Seifert because of the West Coast offense, but they had really good defensive play. I mean, Jesus, the last time the 49ers won the Super Bowl, the offseason was all about the defense.
It was all defense.
It was all defense, right? Like it was, and specifically to beat the Dallas Cowboys. They weren't worried about anybody else in the National Football League. Dion, Ken Norton Jr., Brian Young, Dana Stubble, like all these guys. Like, I'm super pleased. I think what I'm most excited about is for these defensive players, they're gonna get their opportunity. Like you're not gonna have to wait till year 2. Like they might not blossom to year 2, year 3, but you're gonna see them right away.
Which, maybe that is the context as to why the offensive picks were not as crazy about.
They're not going to find the field, those guys.
They're not going to find the field. We're like, there's too many guys ahead of them. But I think that's just the nature of where the offense stands today. Like they didn't have a lot of needs on this offense. It was more or less the same offense they trotted out there last season. And so, I do kind of wonder how much we're going to see of Jordan Watkins and, Bergen and even Jordan James. I do think there's a role for Jordan James. I do see that. And I'm the more I hear about it,
Cincinnati is going to get
exciting.
Kiner. Yeah, I think.
I mean, the UDFAs, man, they always outperform,
which is crazy. Like, look at that guy, and he's not drafted. You know what I mean? Like, and you see some players that are. It's wild to me. I just think, to your point, Steph, like the defense side of the ball, these guys are going to play right away. These offensive guys and that's fine. Like that's a good problem to have. The offense, in theory, yes, was it problematic at moments last year? Yeah, but like you didn't have your left tackle. What was going? You lost your number 1 wide receiver a couple of weeks into the season. You never even saw the offensive. You saw the offensive player of the year from the year before for 1 week during the regular season. Like, in theory, it's almost like they redrafted the offense, right? So because you're getting some healthy people back and maybe you get some things in a line. And a lot of people were like, all the jokes are going out like Kyle's suicidal right now. He's not able to make picks, etc. I think he was just fine with it. I think he was like, hey,
I think so too.
I don't have to twofold. I don't have to take the blame if any of this shit goes wrong. And we do have what we need right now offensively under contract. We do,
Yeah. I think it was a funny joke, but obviously, Kyle signed off on these picks as well.
Jed York was wild during draft day.
Oh my God, that guy, he's happy because he's saving some money and he's like, bring in all these draft picks. Let's see what they can bring.
That was the most excitable I've ever seen Jed York. Since
I guess that's a good thing. I mean, if the owner's happy, I guess that's good. I think everyone is just so happy that Saleh's back. Like it's just this universal vibe that I think Saleh alone has brought to the team. That's just good. Like him alone is just going to do wonders for this defense again. I feel very confident about that. So overall I'm excited about this class. Can't wait to see what these guys do, and especially the defensive side, because we're going to see those guys right away. I mean, Weston, we didn't even talk about the Malik Mustafa thing before we get out of here. I mean, let me just clarify, because on my last show I was on with Croc, and it was Saturday night at the final day of the draft. We went live, we talk about it, and it was literally minutes before we went live that the Malik Mustafa thing came out. And reading it, I only read the headline. That's my bad. I read it as like he tore his ACL again, which
so
it was not.
Stuff. Everybody read it that way.
Everyone just read the headline. But no, it was not a re-tear of his ACL. It was a re-injury. There's other medical terms that I can throw in here to give it additional context, but I'll just say that it doesn't seem as bad. That being said, I think the timeline that Nick Wagner kind of outlined was mid-season, to which Malik Mustafa himself, seemed to maybe scoff at that a little bit. And, as a player, you always think you can get out there sooner. So we'll see. I'm not counting him out until mid-season, but that does, thrust Marquez Siegel into a bigger role right off the bat as well. So as we talk about some of these defensive players, we are going to get to see these guys, get some action early on in the season, and I think they'll be better for it. So that's something I'm looking forward to. But when you heard that, like, just how worried were you? Because I was just
pissed. I was, first of all, upset for the kid, right? Because that's like the worst. Yeah. Like, he just put himself into the national spotlight the way he played last year, which is every young kid's dream, to have that momentum derailed. That's got to suck, right? That's got to be absolutely miserable. So I was like gut wrenched for him. Then I was just gut wrenched as being a 49er fan. Like, why can't we just like deserve this? You know what I mean? Like, why can't we just have like a clean off season? But I was also pissed because I'm like, they've known about this, right? Like,
yeah.
What's the harm in any capacity of the general public knowing that one of your players is hurt? You know what I mean? And may miss time. I don't see the cat and mouse game here. I don't see the play here at all. It just feels like typical 49. My kid is just screaming outside my office right now. Daddy, if you hear my bad. I love you, buddy. I'm almost done. Like, I just don't understand that element of it. But I'm going with Malik's mom on this one. She's been tweeting left and right. Said she's seen that boy run the other day. So I'm saying we've seen that boy run. He good. He'll be back.
Good.
I think the thing that you worry about is inevitably whether it's a repair. If it's like a re-tear, that's the season, Steph. They can sugarcoat it however they want. That's the season. But if it is this like repair where you're talking about no injury to the meniscus and other things around it, it's likely he's back for week 1, but you're talking about missing OTAs, you're talking about missing training camp, you're talking about being rusty when you do come back. Football shape, right? He might be in great conditioning shape, and I just hate that for the kid. Like, I hate that for him, and selfishly, I hate that for us as fans because it's taking away from the product on the field, as injuries always do.
Yeah, so, something to monitor. Another thing to monitor for this offseason is when Malik Mustafa returns, how he's progressing through his rehab. And just to reiterate, this is an injury that happened at the end of the season. So he's well on his way towards rehabbing already. Like, he's been doing that. It's not like the 49ers just found out about this, just like Weston said. And so, yeah, I don't know exactly when the surgery took place, but I think it already happened.
I think it happened.
It happened already, sure, and they're just letting us know about it now.
Yeah,
so kind of them. But
what do we do? We just fund the team, you know what I mean, with ticket sales, and
we don't. Was there any advantage to us knowing? I know you're bringing up, what was the advantage to waiting this long? But, I'd also throw out what's the advantage of telling us right away.
This is what I don't think I think the 49ers are significant, obviously much more in the know about this, and they probably don't view this as big of a deal as we do, because I think safety was always part of the plan in this draft, right? Like, somewhere along, Jesus, we were talking about, people like Barron and other guys, like, early, right? Like, there were things or opportunities, but I think it was always part of their plan. I don't think they're as concerned about Mustafa missing time as maybe we are. They'll let it play out in the media because they don't care, obviously, because they waited 4.5 months to share this information. But I think maybe they don't share it because they're just like, then we just have to hear how we need a safety, we need an offensive lineman, we need not our plan's our plan, cut out the outside noise. I don't know.
Yeah,
trying to make myself feel better.
Yeah, I think just with the draft, they probably maybe didn't want other teams to think that they would go a certain direction. But even that being said, they didn't get a safety until the 5th round. So, but they got a safety, and I think Siegel, there's some nice upside there. I like what I saw from him so far. So he's going to get an opportunity as well as a lot of these other guys. So I'm excited about it. Guys, tomorrow going to be having Ryan Roberts of A to Z Sports, NFL draft analyst, on the show. Almost like a yearly tradition. I don't think I had him on last year, but I like to bring him on almost every year if I can, to break down the 49ers draft and get his thoughts on what he likes, what he didn't like. I have a feeling that he's not going to be a huge fan, but at least for like the back end of the half. But, again, the draft nicks are going to go based off of the consensus, where guys rank out of all 300 plus players, right? So I do suspect he'll be calling some of these guys some reaches. But I can't wait to hear what he says. That's going to be tomorrow on the show. But make sure you like this video for now. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Turn that notification bell so you know when I go live. Subscribe to Weston's channel as well, Island 49. He'll be throwing on some more content there.
Season's coming, baby.
Season is coming, but not before the dead period that is waiting for us before the draft or before the season, as always. But Weston, thank you so much for joining. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. But for now, have a good rest of your Monday, folks. Peace.